Hey everyone, I'm happy that you could join this Excel webinar that I will be hosting. I am Sven Dahlin and I am the CEO of the Nordics for Global Savings Group. We are a deal and coupon platform so that you can save money online before you're doing purchases. I become pretty interested in Excel when I started at CupoNation as an intern. So CupoNation is a part of Global Savings Group, and then my current manager, she had worked at a bank, and she had pretty high standards in Excel and was expecting a lot from me to produce really quick analysis based on Excel. And yeah, I said I was really good in the interview, which I thought I was, but when I realized how good she was, I realized that, wow, I am really shitty. I can do so much better. She started teaching me a lot of stuff, took a lot of time, really happy for that. And I started taking notes. It became a book. The book became viral, and today we're here. So what you will learn in the webinar is a very quick introduction of what I learned from the last 3 years working here. And we will start off with some basic stuff, so how you can move faster in the Excel sheet and not have to scroll around. And then we will move on to a little bit more advanced formulas in the end, such as Vlookup and pivot table that I saw some people already requested. And if you have any questions during the webinar, you can write in the group chat or send an email to Paul, my colleague, and he will forward the message to me. An important thing is that the quality of the stream might be a little bit low on your computer. It's because it's automatic set by YouTube. So what you have to do is to go to the right corner in the settings, and there you can change the quality to have a little bit better stream so you can see what I will be doing in Excel in a high quality, so it will not be blurry at all. Formulas that I'm using semicolon and not comma. It depends on your computer settings, meaning that sometimes the settings is comma and sometimes it's semicolon. So just be careful about that. But if you're using Excel, you will see the hints and how to use it. After the webinar, you will get a link from Paul to 1, download my book, and 2, you can see this video once again. So it's rather easy for you to do this formula at home because we will also share this Excel file that I'm going through with you. So you can just download it and try to do this formula by yourself with the book, because everything is also explained rather well in the book, I would say. So let's dig right into it. So what you're seeing here is, yeah, and also remember that I would say is what I'm doing now, you don't have to do it yourself because it would take quite some time for you to set up these formulas. So instead, rather listening and just try to focus on tagging along. So what we're seeing here is a test, so rather easy. But if you have a lot of data in your Excel file, you might have to scroll quite a lot. It takes quite a lot of time. It hurts your thumb after a while, and you will get tired. So there are some easy ways to move in Excel. So what I will do now is to press Control and then arrow down. When you do this, Control, arrow down, you will go to the cell in the bottom. So if you have a cell with maybe 200-300 rows in it, you will go to the bottom right away. So it's a very, very easy way to move quickly. So if you do Control up, you will go to the top instead of scrolling for 2 minutes, which will get kind of tough. And also, if you press Control and then go to the right, you will of course go to the end right. And when you know these kind of things, you can mark the data really, really quickly as well. So if we go back by using Control left, then we're back in the cell A1 here. So instead of just doing Control, you can do Control Shift and then press arrow down. What will happen is that we will mark all the data quickly, and then by pressing Control C, you can copy the data right away instead of scrolling down, trying to mark it, and these kind of things. It's really tricky. So if you want to mark everything, you do Control Shift, and then, as we have already done, arrow down, you can go to the arrow to the right, and then you have marked all the data in the sheet. a really quick way on how to save some time quickly. My second, I would say, favorite thing is to use filters, because if you have a lot of data in the sheet, it's tricky to see everything at the same time, so we need to filter out and use some filters simply. So up here in the right corner under home, so first home here, and then the sort and filter, you can create a filter. By having a filter, you can simply filter out on things, as the name is suggesting. There is a shortcut that I recommend everyone to learn. It's Control-Shift-L. And this is on a PC. On a MacBook, it's different. So I'm sitting on a PC at the moment, which is rather important to know. So by doing Control-Shift-L, you will also remove the filter. By adding it, you will be really, really quick on these kind of things. With the filter, you can decide to remove some certain rows. So let's say that you have, by pressing this arrow button down, and you have the just unbox everything that you don't want to have, and then press OK. When I'm using Excel, something I learned after maybe 1 year, I learned on how to use the mouse as little as possible, because it's simply faster if you do it on the keyboard. So there is a shortcut. You're pressing Alt and then arrow down. What will happen then is that this drop-down menu will open. So the same thing as pressing this one. And instead of unboxing everything with the mouse, takes quite some time, you can go up and down with your keyboard and then press space. When you press space, you either select or unselect the box. So if you really want to do this fast and have a lot of data, you can just press space really quickly, and most of the things will be unboxed rather quick, and then press enter. When you press enter, the filter will become active, and you have saved quite a lot of time on this. We already have a question from Lisa. Are you writing about subjects in the book that you want to talk about today? No, everything that is in the book will be covered today. Today will be more of an explain. I think it's easier to show this live than to have some print screens in the book. It's more interactive. And then you can select all once again, and you will see that you have no filters. One important thing is if you, as I said, like if you have a lot of data, so a lot of columns or rows, and you have unselected these by pressing space and then enter, you also have this one, sort and filter. So let's say that you have filter on a lot of places, then you can use clear, because clear will remove the filters on all of them at the same time. I always do this before I save a sheet, for example, because otherwise you might get stuck up with a filter or somewhere where you don't want to have it because you simply didn't see it. So I will always clear the filter. So let's move on to the format painter. So I have noticed when I copy things, sometimes from Word documents or another Excel sheet or even Google spreadsheet or just from the internet, simply from a page, the data might look a little bit weird, like in this case. So I don't want to go in all cells and say, hey, I want this font, I want this color, and I want this background. It takes quite some time. So I always go to the one that I like. So I like where it says hi, it's in Calibri, and font size 11, and it's a normal cell simply. So what I want to have is this hi, and I want to change it to all of these to have it in the same way. What you can do is press Format Painter. What this one will do is to copy the conditions from the cell A1 that we're in, and then it will put that on all of the other cells. So clicking on Format Painter and then drag it over all of these will simply make it good looking. You save quite a lot of time on this, I would say, and it's a really good one. But of course, there are some more cool ways to do it and how to impress your colleagues. So what I do a little bit is to either you can click on the Format Painter, and as I shown in the last example, you can do Control Shift and then arrow down. Because what will happen then is that you will mark everything. So I will press Control Shift and arrow down. This is way faster than to drag everything. And I will not say that it looks cooler, but it is a little bit cooler to do it this way. Of course, if you have some gaps in between the cells, you can't use this one. So what you can do then is to go back here and press Format Painter. What you can do is to press on this A then. So what it will do then is that it will choose the whole A column, and meaning that everything in this one will be marked and not only the number 11, 12. So this one will also be changed if it would have been some information there. So as I talked about in the earlier stage, is that I try to use the keyboard as much as possible. So always when you press Alt, so normally the keyboard or button next to the space, left side of the space, you can press Alt. So what you will see then up here is letters. All of these letters you can choose on your keyboard and then go to those shortcuts. So home is the H. It's rather simple knowledge here. So you press H. What will happen then is that you go to the home menu and you can choose whatever you want here to choose. So I want to use the Format Painter again. So what I have to do then is to press FP really quickly. And now you can see that FP has been chosen. And then, as said earlier, you can do Control-Shift and then arrow down. So what will happen is that everything will be marked and everything will look well. And then we're moving on to text to columns. Oh, the first thing I said is that sometimes using semicolon and sometimes commas. It depends simply on your computer settings. What will happen if I'm downloading something with comma and I have semicolon on my computer is that the data will simply not look good. So what we have now in cell A1 is all of the headlines, but all of these headlines should be in different cells. I want to have it in B, C, D, E, F, and F. And the same goes with these text documents. And this is also the question from someone. That how do I fix this in an easy way? So what I would suggest everyone to do is to click on the A, because when you do this, you choose everything in the column. And then you go to data. What you have here is called something text to columns. And that's pretty much what we want to do. We have text in one cell, but we want to have it in more. And then always choose the limited. I have never ever used fixed width, and I hope that you will never have to do it. I don't see the advantage simply of doing it. So delimited, and then you go to next. What you will see here is a few choices, and semicolon or comma, so also depends. In this example, you can see that we have commas between the text here, meaning that we will choose comma. You can also press around to see, but you see when I press semicolon, nothing will happen. So when I press comma, everything gets structured in a really nice way. So this is kind of a preview from Excel saying, okay, this is how it will look like when you press finish. So that's the only thing we will do from here. We will press finish right away. So what happens then is that all this text gets separated as it should be with the correct data. So in a really nice and simple way. Issue is now that, okay, I can't really see the data. So there are some easy tricks to be able to see this data in a quite nice way. So whenever you see this symbol, it's a line with two arrows on both sides, you can double click it. What will happen then is that it gets extended to the end of the headline because it's the longest cell. To do this on all of these takes quite some time. So instead of doing 6 double clicks, you can only do 1. So what I'm doing now is to mark all of these cells by pressing on the A to F. And then when you go to this symbol and see it again, the straight line with 2 arrows on the side, then you double click it. What will happen is that all of these get fixed on the same width. So it's rather easy to do these kind of things and how to see the data in a quick way. I have a question from John. So what is my favorite trick in Excel? My favorite trick is probably to play around with a lot of formulas. So I would probably say that my favorite thing to do is all of this if, or, and if, and, because when you have succeeded with a really long one of those formulas, I'm rather satisfied with my life. So I have a life, sorry, it sounds like Excel is my life, but I like it a lot, like when you really succeed and been sitting for 1 hour and like, yes, I've finally made it through with some progress. So I would focus a little bit on going through this if or. I will cover it at the end of this webinar, but those kind of things are pretty nice. And then we can move on to conditional formatting. So what we have here is the company, and yes, the company name and the revenues of the company. This can, of course, be anything from the inventory, how much you have, and if you have like 2 inventories left in your stock and you want to have those marked as red, you can simply mark those with conditional formatting, so it's automatically being marked as red. You don't have to go in by yourself and fill, okay, this number is under 200,000, let's mark it as yellow. It's time consuming, it's not being updated automatically. So I would rather go for the conditional formatting, which is being updated automatically depending on how you want to change it. So what we're gonna do now is to go up here. So most people that I see and are a little bit more beginner in Excel, they choose to mark it. So clicking on A2 and just simply drag it down. And then it's back to move quickly. I think it's so much faster if you go to the cell A2 or B2 is in this example and do Control Shift and arrow down. And then you mark everything with one click. Instead of dragging it down, it's tough to see where it's going. So then you have already under Home, you have conditional formatting. So you press it, and what we want to set up now is a new rule. You can choose so many different things, color scales, whatever you. So we're going to go for the new rule. And then you have a lot of choices again, but we're going to choose format only cells that contains. So what you can do is to put cell value. In this case, I will put greater than. So I want all the cells that are higher than 400,000 to be green. So I start by writing 400,000, and then the preview, you can basically tell Excel like, okay, when it is higher than 400,000, what do I want to do with this? So you press format. So you can change font, a little bit of everything, but we will go to fill, and we want to have this as green. So we choose the color green. You can choose pretty much exactly what you want. And then OK. And then we just press OK again. So what will happen now is that all of these will automatically become green. So let's change that company 9. In the future, it will be 389,000. This one will no longer be marked as green because it's not above 400,000. On these conditional formatting, you can choose as many rules as you want. Normally, for me, I put this to make it easier for either my manager or someone else to see the data in a really quick way, in a really good looking way. So I mark it once again and choose conditional formatting, and then new rule. So format only cells that contains. We go back to this and cell value. So I want cells that are less than, let's say, 200,000 in this case, to be marked as red. So I write less than, choose it in the drop-down menu, and then put 200,000. Once again, we go back to the fill, and I will mark this as red because I simply don't think that companies, in this case, with lower revenue than 200,000 euros are interesting. So let's press OK. You see the preview as red, and then press OK. So what will happen is that company 8 and company 20 will be marked as red. So the only good thing with this conditional formatting, it's not only that you can, it's automatic, you can also filter on this. So as said earlier, you can put a filter. So I will do the shortcut. So by pressing Control Shift L, the filter here will appear. So, and then you can choose here, filter by color. So, okay, I only want to see the ones with green. Let's say that I want to filter a little bit quickly. Then I choose the color green here. And then the ones that are green, so to say, the revenues with more than 400,000. And everything is being selected. Yeah, and then the revenue. So let's filter on the color red instead. So as there are only two companies with a revenue lower than 200,000, it will be a little bit lower. So I got a comment that it's not possible to see what you're doing in the menus. The screen reverts to move quickly page. I will change the sharing settings on my screen, and this should help. So sorry if it will blink a little bit now. So thanks for the comment. I hope that you should be able to see my screen now and also the menu that is not blinking. Sorry if you missed anything. So what we can do now is to move on to combine text and cells. I think this is a rather useful one. So sometimes when you're copying from Word or someone that is a little bit more beginner maybe have been using Excel, you have the first name and last name in different rows or cells. So what we want to do here is to combine these cells. So and always when you start a formula, you start by writing equal to or a plus. You can choose, both of them will work. So I always use equal to. It's just a simple habit from my side. So what you choose is this cell. So we want to start with A2 because it's the first name. And always when you combine a new cell and we'll put them together, you use an and sign. So I put the and sign, and then I choose the cell B2. And then I press enter. So what will happen now is that the name will be put together. It doesn't look too good because the name is combined. We need a space in between. So what I will do is to start over. I will put delete here. So we start over. And we're choosing Mary again as the first name because that's what we want. But what we need in between now is a space. And earlier said, we're using an and sign to see this. So when you're writing text in an Excel cell, you always use quotation marks around it. So you put quotation mark, and then I will put space, and then I will end with another quotation mark. Is that the name will be here, and then you will have a space. So now again, we need to connect to another cell, so we need to use the and sign. And then we can go here on B2. So what will happen now is that Mary Smith will look in a nice way. So of course, no one wants to write this formula 20 times, which I understand, or 10 times in this case. So whenever you see this symbol, it's a cross, you can choose it and then drag it down. What will happen is that all of this formula gets in the same order and everything will be there. So I will remove it. There are, of course, a lot of ways to do this. So I will just mark it and push delete. Also, when you see this one, you can just double click it. So by double clicking it, everything will also be the same. So I would choose double clicking when you have a lot of rows, but if it's only 10 rows, it's rather easy to go there. So let's move on to upper, lower, and proper. This is also a little bit sometimes happening to me. Always when I'm copying stuff from online, it might look a little bit funky. So there are some easy ways to fix this in a quick way. So always when we start a formula, we write equal to. So in this case, we're going to start with upper. So what upper will do when you write it, you can also see. So from my side, I think this is the best thing with Excel compared to Google Sheets. And it's that you can see what the formula is about. You cannot see this in Google Sheets, but you can see this in Excel. So converts a text string to all uppercase letters. So this is pretty much what we want to do. All of this should be upper letter. I will stop right away. I have a question from Lars. Do you prefer Excel over Google Sheets, and why? Can your tips also be used in Google Sheets? So yes, everything can be used in Google Sheets. I think Google Sheets are always using comma and never semicolon. So I will use semicolon later on in my formulas. So when you do these kind of things in Google Sheets, you need to change it to a comma, but everything can be used. I think Google Sheets is great, but I think this, like, if I go back a little bit, that it's telling you what the formula will do. It's giving you small hints on how to move on next in the formula. I think that is the best part about Excel and how it's being helpful to everyone. So I will choose upper and then text. So what the text is the cell that I want to convert to only upper letters, which in this case is A1. So I press A1. And here you also see the small suggestion. So it says that the formula should be upper and then text and then end parentheses. So what we have now is upper, we have a parenthesis, and we have the cell A1, but we don't have an end parenthesis. So that's the thing we'll put at the end now. You see also that it's getting bold for a quick moment, and then you can press enter. So what will happen now is that, hey, I can't really write it all in all capital letters. So now we will do the same thing, but to only have lowercase letter. So we write equal to and then lower. So the same here, converts all letter in a text string to lowercase. So either you can double click this or press tab. So tab is the button just above the caps lock on, I would say, old computers. So pressing tab will do this, and then you get everything automatically. And then text. So same here, you choose A2, and as suggested, it's saying that it should be an end parenthesis. And then we go for an enter again. So now everything will be in small letters. Of course, maybe it's not ideal to have it like that. That's why they also have a third formula that is called proper. So proper would change everything into, or the first word into capital and everything else into a lowercase. So I will write proper now and convert the text string to a proper case. The first letter in each word to uppercase and all other letters to lowercase. It will probably look better in most cases. So proper, and then I press tab. And text, as usual, you choose A3, and then you go with an end parenthesis and go for enter. So, hey, I can't really write it all. It looks way better than what it originally did. So let's move on to left, mid, and right. So what I've seen a lot of times are that the dates are put together, and let's say that you want to extract the beginning of the month, or which day it's been sold, or which year even it has been sold, or you simply want to extract the date, or even a text string from a text that you're using. So what this one is called left, mid, and right. So what we will start with is to get the first two numbers here. So I want to know which day it's been sold, or which day the part is, or anything that you want to plan or want to know. So what we'll do is to write left. So returns the specific number of characters from the start of a text string. And I always press tab, simply because it's faster than double clicking. And by double clicking is that sometimes I miss it, I'm a little bit clumsy or anything, and then we have to start over. So I press tab, it's a safe one. And then you have the text, upper, lower, and proper. The text one is the cell one that you want to use. So in our case, it's the cell A2, so I press the A2. What you see now is the semicolon. And this is a little bit what I've been talking about, your adjustment in the settings on either Google Sheets or Excel. Either you have comma or semicolon. I have semicolon, so I press semicolon. Whoops, that was not supposed to happen. And then we're back, so I will redo that. So we press this cell A2, and then semicolon, and then number of characters. So as I said in the beginning, we would like to have the first two. So I want to know which day it is. So then I write 2, and then I put end parentheses. What will happen then is that it brings 0, 1, which are the first two. And then I can drag this down, and you can see that there are the two first numbers from everything. So also another good thing from, I would say, maybe Lars, that everything that I think the most key thing about Excel is to know that you can do it. You don't need to know how you do it, because Google exists and you can always Google when you need help, as long as you know it's possible. And I would say that every single thing in Excel is possible. You just need to know how to Google to find it, and that's a rather easy one. But everything is possible, no doubt. So I have a rather long question, which is it possible to change the data in one sheet by another automatically? Example, it's and I'm working in one sheet, and if I change the data in another sheet, I want to have it updated automatically. Yes, it is possible. And you can either use Vlookup, because it's also updated automatically if you choose to update the links. I will not go into it in details, but you can pretty much click right and then refresh the data. So it is possible, but if you want to know more about it, you can always send Paul a message, and I can explain it later. But it will take a little bit too much time now to go into it, and it's a little bit too advanced at the moment. But I'm happy to help if you need my help with it. So let's move on with the left, mid, and right. So now we know how to take the first two. So instead, we will go for the right. So right returns the specific number of characters from the end of a text string. So in this case, we would like to know how many, like in which year maybe it was being sold, or just simply the number of the product. We want to know the 4 last digits. So we write right and put equal to, of course, in the beginning, and then I press tab. So what I want to know now is the text string, as always, as we choose, and then I press semicolon. You also see this now. This is bold, so we're still in this like selection. But as soon as you press semicolon or comma, you have the number of characters. So we move on here. So I want to have the last 4 digits, so I press 4, and then I do an end parenthesis. So what will happen is that it takes the 4 last digits, and then we can drag it down. It's a rather easy way to extract information in a quick way. And the little bit more tricky one, I would say, is probably mid. I will remove this formula. So mid is when you need something from the middle of a text string. So in this case, I would like to know, okay, which month did it happen? I want to have the number in a, like, any product number or something like that. And then you need to use mid. So I will write mid, always first equal to, and returns the characters from the middle of a text string, giving the start and position and length. So you know what you need to put in here to require it. So the text, still the same text as always. So starting number, in our case, you have 0, 1, and then a dot. That means that the start number will be number 4, so the 0, because we want to have that one. So I write start number 4, and then the number of characters is 2, because I only want to have 2 numbers here. I want to have these in the middle, so the month, and then I do end parentheses. Then it will take 01. And then we can drag it down. And then you will only see the month. There are, of course, you can do this with your keyboard in a rather fast way as well. So I will remove the data, because I think it's good to know this kind of shortcuts. So what I will do is to press Ctrl-C to copy this cell. I will go 1 step to the left, and as in the first example, I will press Ctrl down to go to the bottom, and then 1 to the right. So what we have now is that I will press Ctrl-V to paste the data. So now we have mid here in the bottom. So saying A12, starting position 4, and number 2 character. So the same as here, it's just that it's a different text string. So now when you're in the bottom here, you can copy it and then go up to the top. So in the bottom here, you press Ctrl, Shift, and up. We'll go to the top then, and then you can press Ctrl-V to paste the data, and then you will have the month as well. I normally use this simply because it's faster, it's easier, and it is with the keyboard. The more you use your keyboard, the faster you will be, and you will look like a machine at the end. So let's move on to group. There are some simply good ways to hide information in Excel, but also how to group the information. I normally use group instead of hide because I think hide is it's tricky to use. It's not easy. So we have a lot of information in a really big Excel file. You might want to say like, okay, I don't want to see the column D to G. So what you can do is to mark these columns. So I'm marking these 4, and you can right click and then press hide in the bottom. You also have unhide here if you would like to unhide them in the future. So when you do this hide, they will simply disappear from the sheet. So you can mark over these 2 and then press unhide. So I'm right clicking up here and then go down to unhide. And then they will be back. I think this is a rather tricky way to do it because one, I think it's really easy to miss where you have hidden cells. So I always use group instead. So group, you do pretty much the same thing. So you mark the cells that you don't want to see anymore and you go to data. So up in data, you have the group here. So group, and then just simply group it. What will happen then is that you will have this minus and plus sign. So when you click the minus, it will be hidden. And when you press the plus, it will come back. I think this is way easier to use than the hide. I think it's clear that it's there. Unhide and hide information. So let's move on to len. I count a lot of characters because it's simply, I need to know how long a text string is. Maybe the invitation card is can't be longer than 20 words. Yeah, then there are some easy formulas to use. So always start the formula with equal to, and to count the characters of this sentence, you will use a formula that is called len. So write in len, and then returns the number of characters in a text string. So rather clear information. And then you can press shift. So len, and then the text. So we choose the A1 because this is the one sentence where we want to know how many characters there are. And then you end with an end parenthesis. Always the formula ends with an end parenthesis, and then press enter. Then you will see that, okay, the sentence is 45 characters and the limit was 50. So that means that we're good to go. This one, I will just send it with the Excel file for free. I will not go into details. It's a rather more tricky and advanced formula, but I think it's rather good to know the formula, because if you need to count words instead of characters, you can use this formula. You can also Google it to see, okay, I want to have this. If you miss the formula, remove the Excel file. It's rather easy to find a formula online, but it's tricky to explain. So I will move on to COUNTIF. I also have a question. So which formula do you use the most and why? So in my job, I have to always combine a lot of Excel files. So we have different files. So when you're using different Excel files and want to combine the data, I'm using Vlookup. It's the second last formula I will go through today. It's for sure the most valuable one, and it will save, no doubt, the most time in your life. So COUNTIF, I think it's the perfect one to count either sales or how many that are coming to the Christmas party or summer party or whatever you have planned up. And you can only fill in yes or no, so it's rather easy. So simply we need to count these yes. I can also count the yes by doing this. It's rather simple, but if you have 500 people in an office and you want the data to be updated automatically, you can use COUNTIF. So by writing COUNTIF, so equal to, and then count if. So counts the number of cells within a range that means the given condition. So the given condition in this case will be yes. So COUNTIF with an equal to in the beginning, and then I press tab. And then we have the range. So the range is, okay, where should Excel look for this information? So we're gonna mark the ones where people have answered or will answer for the future as well. And then you have the range. And the criteria will be yes in this case, because we want to know how many that are being there. And since it is text in this example, you need to use quotation mark. So you write quotation mark, yes, and then quotation mark again to end it. And then you see here that we're not really done. This is still in bold, and you can see that there is an end parenthesis on the end. So we're going to use the end parenthesis at the end. And then press enter. And then you will know, okay, 5 people are coming, good. That's how much I will order in terms of food and drinks. And then we have no as well. So we're doing the same thing. So write equal to, and then count if. Counts the number. And then the range. The range is, of course, the same one. And then we have the criteria. So the criteria in this case is no. So you write a quotation mark, and then no, and then end with a quotation mark again to close it. And we're still in the bold one, meaning that we're not really done with this formula. So we put an end parenthesis and then press enter. So you have yes, no. But then we have the small issue like, okay, there have been some lazy people in the office. They have not been saying, okay, I want to comma, maybe yes or no. So they have just left it blank. But we can also count blanks. So we start as always in the same way, equal to, and then write count if, and tab. So range, still the same, nothing has changed. And then you choose the criteria. So the criteria can't be, you can't write blank. So since it is a text in theory, you can write 2 quotation marks. So when you write 2 quotation marks together, it will be counted as a blank one. If you put a space, then it's a space in between. But up here, then you can do an end parenthesis as well. So this formula will count the amount of blanks. So now we know that 5 people are coming, 3 are not coming, and 2 has been lazy and not been answering yet. So let's move on to the next one, which is sum. So since maybe my screen got a little bit locked in the beginning, I will show this trick again. So you can either click on home here, or you can use a little bit of shortcuts. I normally use the shortcuts. So I'm going back to data just to state an example. So when you press the Alt, so Alt, the one next to your space to the left side, normally, you press this one, and you see the letters coming up here. So I will press H because I want to go back to home. So what you see here now is that all of these has a value. So we're going to use auto sum, and then you're going to use the letter U that you can see up here. So I'm just pressing U. And then I want the sum, meaning that I have to choose another one. So I'm going to press S. Excel is really smart in this way. So it understands where the numbers are and where it should take the auto sum from. So it's in a really nice way, selected all of the data. And then all you have to do is actually just to press enter. And then you will see the combined data of the value. So 6.8 million euros. I will also show this without any cool shortcuts. So I will remove this cell now. So instead, you can actually just press auto sum here. Might be easier sometimes. And it will select all the information for you. And the result is, of course, the same. There are some easy ways to go to see this data. You can also just go up here and then mark everything. So either by dragging the mouse down or using Control, Shift, arrow down, as I've been using quite a lot. And what you will see then down here is that you have the average even, you have the count. So there are 20 companies, correct? That means that the count is correct. And you have the sum here as well. And the average, if you ever would need that as well. So the issue comes when we have AutoSum. So let's say in this case, and press enter. Let's say that, okay, I want to filter out some revenues that are not simply relevant, or I don't want to know about these companies. So there is already a filter here, like that. And then you can press this drop-down menu and then unselect a few. So either you press with the mouse or you do it with the space. And then you can press enter. So the formula here, it's sum. It's checking B2 to B21. So it's still checking it no matter if it's filtered or not, meaning that you will not see the updated revenue. So I normally have 2 totals. So I have one total here, and then you can have another total under where it's like total if filter. So what we're going to do now is to remove the filter. So we have all the data. You can see that there are no filter, and you can also see it up here, sort and filter, because you can't press clear. That means that there are no filters anymore. So to use this one, you use a formula that is called subtotal, because I want to know how much the data is when it is in a filter. So you go to subtotal and then returns a subtotal in a list or database. That's what we want. So when you press tab, you will see that subtotal has a lot of different functions and what you can use it for. In our case, we will go for the sum. So we're going to choose for number 9. So either you can double click it, which I did now, and then you will see the function number. This is just internally for Excel. So, and then you have the reference. So the reference is all of this revenue here. So we're going to mark this data, and then you can choose as many cells as you want here and in different columns by using semicolons. But when you see this ... end parenthesis, and then you do an end parenthesis because we don't want to keep going with different formulas, and then you press enter. This is the same as this one. So we can use Format Painter now to make it look a little bit better. So now we're back. So Format Painter is always handy, no matter what. That's my clear message. So let's say that now that I would like to filter here, I would like to remove a few of these, and then by pressing enter, it will be activated. So the total will still be 6.8 million, but total in filter, so we have removed a few, is 6,069,000. I just got a question from Hannah. Where can I go to see an overview over the different shortcuts one I can use in Excel? So one, I have gathered a few shortcuts in the book. It's at the last page of the book. Those are the shortcuts that I use the most. Otherwise, I would suggest to Google most handy shortcuts in Excel, or 20 best tricks in Excel shortcuts. You will get a lot of information from those that you will use, and try to learn 2 per day. I think it's an easy way to remember them as well. So now back to what I talked a little bit earlier about, is the if and if or and if and. So if is a statement formula, I would say. So if you want to have different statements and want to know if they are fulfilled or not fulfilled, you can use these kind of formulas. So we're going to start pretty simple. So always start formula by writing equal to. And what I want to know in this case, if the country here is Sweden, or if it's not Sweden. So what I have to do then is to write if. So check whether a condition is met and returns one value. So we choose if and then press tab. So logical test. So the logical test will be if B2 is equal to Sweden. So since it is text, we're going to write the quotation mark and then Sweden, and then end with quotation mark. So as you see now, you're still in the logical test. So now we have to say to Excel, like, okay, but if this is true, I want you to give me something. So what we're going to do is, if this one is Sweden, we're going to have the value 1. You can write whatever you want in value. If true, you can write 1000. You can write, okay, thanks for the information. But I normally go for 1 or 0, because then it's very easy to build on that formula. So now we're going to have to select what if it's false. So I'm going to put a 0 now, and then an parenthesis, because that's how we lock the formula. And obviously, this is Sweden. Everyone can see it, I hope. But if you drag this down, you will see, like, okay, Denmark is not Sweden. Some people might say that. But here it's 0, 0, and Sweden again. So number 1. So I'm going to remove this because this is only one statement. You can build on as many statements as you want. So what we're going to do now is I'm even going to remove this formula. So let's say that you want to know, okay, I want to know when the country is Sweden and the company has a higher revenue than 400,000. So we start over by writing if, and then we're going to choose or. So or, is for if one of the requirements are fulfilled. Is the company from Sweden, or is the revenue higher than 400,000? So that's what we will ask ourselves. So the logical one. So I'm going to say if the country is equal to, as we did in the same one, and then quotation marks, and then Sweden. And then we have another logical. So I want to know if this one is higher than 400,000. And then end parentheses. So if this is true, 1, and if this is false, I want 0, and then end parentheses. So this is Sweden, of course. And then we can drag it down. I realized that I flipped this around, so they should be the other way around. There we go. Sorry. So in this case, it's Sweden. You have Denmark, so it's not Sweden, Denmark. And the revenues are not higher than 400,000, meaning that the formula will give 0. In this case, the country is not Sweden, but the revenue are higher than 400,000, meaning that will be a number 1. And the same goes on here. So not Sweden and not higher revenue than 400,000. So or is for if one of the requirements are fulfilled. So then I'm going to remove this. And we're going to go with, I want the both requirements to be fulfilled. So equal to, and then write if, and then press tab. So we're going to go with and in this case. So checks whether all arguments are true. So this is the important thing, that both of them are fulfilled. So logical will still be this one. We're going to try if this one is Sweden. And then the logical 2, you do this with a semicolon to change to logical 2. And then you want to know if this one is higher than 400,000. And since we don't want a logical 3, we do an end parenthesis there. We're still at the logical test. So to move to value if true, we do a semicolon. And then we put 1. And if it's not fulfilled, we want it to be a 0, and then end parenthesis. So the country here is Sweden, but the revenue is not higher than 400,000, meaning that it gives a 0. So I will drag this one down. So the only one that will be fulfilled is the last one, where you have Sweden as a country, and the revenue is higher than 400,000. So let's move on to the formula trim. So I have had a lot of Excels and trying to do Vlookups, but I never made them work. The most of the cases because of that was that someone had put like some parentheses at the end, so I couldn't get an exact match. And it's also rather annoying, and it's tough to see when it's double spaces in between. So if you want to trim up the text cell, you can use the formula that's called trim. So it's rather easy. So you write equal to and then trim. And then you see here, remove all spaces from a text string except for single spaces between words. So how you would write normally. So we have trim and then press tab. Then we can choose the text. In this case, A1. So you always use the one that you want to change. And then an end parenthesis. What will happen now is that everything will look rather well. There are no parentheses at the end. So a really nice one. So I got a question from Antonio. What do you think about online versions of Excel? Does it lose some options? 100% sure it does. I have a formula here that is called Vlookup. I'm not sure if you can download that on the online one. So Vlookup is a plugin from Microsoft Excel themselves, so you can check similarity. So these kind of plugins, I think you lose them in the online versions. I'm not 100% sure, so I will not say yes or no. I can't answer that question properly. So let's move on to Vlookup, which is the formula that I for sure use the most in my job. So let's say that you have the company name and the country. So we see here that it's in a little bit mixed order, so 1, 18, 13, meaning that you can't just copy it from this information. So I need to use a Vlookup, because if you have 500 rows, you don't want to do this manually. Everything can be made automatically in Excel. So I would really try to go for that and do as little as possible copy pasting. So starting by Vlookup, what we want is to have the revenue for company 1. So you write equal to and then Vlookup. So Vlookup and then press tab. So the lookup value, it's always the common factor. So in this case, what is the same on both tabs is the company name, because the company name will never change. It's the same on both sides. So we choose the company name. And to move on, in a formula, you always use the semicolon or comma. So now we're a table array. So table array means where do I want to get the information from? So where I want to get the information from is from this tab. So I click on this tab, and then I mark where Excel should look for this information. So Excel should look for this information in column A, which means that I press on A. But I want the information to be the revenues, meaning that I have to drag it out a little bit. So what you see next to the C is that it says 1048 and so on, and then times 3C. So that number is always good to remember. That means the number you should put in the next step of the formula to put up, because you can also count. You can say that A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, meaning that you choose that one. So when you mark those one, you do a semicolon and then press the number 3, because then it will spit out from row 1, 2, and 3. This is from which row we want information. And then we do another semicolon. I always use false. True is approximate and false is exact. So always go for false. You do it by writing false or double click this one. You can choose. And then end parentheses. What will happen now is that it brings the revenue exactly as we wanted for company 1, and you can drag it down. As you see now, we only had 5 companies. So company 4, company 2, company 5, company 3, and company 1. The other ones we simply don't have. So this doesn't look too good maybe in the sheet when it's saying like NA. We need to find it in an easy way. So what you can do is to tell Excel like, hey, whenever you have an issue like this or a formula issue, you can put if error. So important with this formula, I always use it when I'm done with my formulas, because otherwise I don't know if I made a mistake in a formula. So this is an easy way to do it. So you write if, sorry, I will start over. So you go up here to the first cell, and then you write if error, and there you have it. So returns value if error. So whenever it's NA, we can decide which information we want it to be. So I'm pressing tab, and then you see the parentheses coming up, and then you go to the end of the formula. So we're still at the value. So I want to say, what if it's not finding it? What should the value be? So I'm using semicolon, and now we can put it here. And for me personally, I normally put it as blank. I think it's easiest to see that. So by putting blank, as in the same case as COUNTIF, we're using double quotation marks. I'm putting double quotation marks in the formula and then end with an end parenthesis. Enter. So nothing will happen with this one because it had found a value. But if I'm dragging this one down, you will see that all of these where it said NA will now be an empty space. It looks pretty nice. It's pretty simple. And the data will similarly look more professionally made. So this is also what we got asked for recently. So I added it. It's about pivot table. I think pivot tables are mostly used in a little bit more advanced ways, but I think it's really good to know. It makes really easier to filter and to move on to make nice data. So what we're gonna do is to mark all of this. So either you can mark it like this by dragging it over, or you choose to do the Control-Shift thing that I always suggest. So press Control-Shift and then press arrow to the right. So then you mark the first row, and then Control-Shift and arrow to the bottom, and then you have marked all of that as well. I think it's easier. You make sure that everything is marked correctly, and then we move on to the pivot table. So I will use insert, and then you have pivot table here to the left. So it also say easily arrange and summarize complex data in a pivot table. That's a pretty good explanation of it. So if you press that one, you will say like select a tab or range. Since we have already chosen the range, we have it here already. So it's made for us. And then you can choose where you want to put the pivot table. So either in a new worksheet or in the same worksheet that we're using. I'm gonna start to open it in a new tab, so a new worksheet. So I just press OK when this one comes up. So what will happen then is that we have it in sheet 2. But this is completely empty now. And here you have the choices that you can choose. So company name, of course, I'm pressing that one. I'm pressing the country, and I'm pressing the revenue. So now we have all of these. It looks a little bit like a mess to me. So you can, of course, change this a little bit. So I normally have one on filter, because that's normally what you do when you have a pivot table. You want to filter out some information. So all you have to do when you see this 4 symbols things, you drag it to the country. And then you have up here, you can select country. So select multiple items by clicking this one. So let's say that you want to filter out on Denmark. You only want to show countries from Norway and Sweden. And then you press OK. And then simply Denmark will be out of the picture. If you want to remove Sweden instead, you just go back here and change it to only show Denmark and not Sweden. And then OK. And this total is always being updated. It's a little bit like Subtotal that we talked about earlier. What you can do also is to, of course, change these filters. It doesn't need to be country on top. You can also choose company. So if we're going to move, so all you need to do is, when you see these 4 symbols, is to drag it. And then you drag up the company up here instead. So now you have each country, how much it makes down here instead. And the company, you can also choose to select and say like, hey, I don't want to have the information of company 1, 10, 11. And then you press OK. And then those will disappear from this data. So that is all the information and short Excel tricks that I wanted to learn. One formula that I will not cover today is the remove duplicates. I think it's a really handy formula. It's in my book. I think you should look at it. I think it will help you to have better data and more qualified data. So as said in the beginning of the introduction, we will send out this book to you so you can look it through. We will send out a link so you can look at the webinar again if it was something that went a little bit too quick. I talk extremely quickly sometimes, I know it. We will also send out the Excel file so you can practice yourself. You will have one Excel file where it's blank, so where I haven't put any information, but you will also have the one where I have put all the information and the formulas. So if you don't want to look at the webinar again, you can look at both Excel files and understand it maybe from that instead. So from my side, I'm very happy that you wanted to listen to me for 1 hour, and I really hope that you have learned some easy Excel things. And yeah, I don't have any more questions, so have a nice day today, and I hope you the best.